A moonlit African road at dusk, mist swirling around a narrow path lined with ancient trees. A wooden shrine stands alone beside the road, glowing faintly under the orange sunset. The atmosphere is tense, silent, and otherworldly. They say December journeys are never ordinary. Some roads, especially in the heart of Africa, open gates not just to distant towns, but to unseen worlds. It began with laughter. Students returning home after a long, exhausting term, their bus loaded with chatter, food, and the sweet smell of freedom. The driver, an old man with clouded eyes, warned them in a trembling voice, "If you hear drums in the forest, don't look back." They laughed, thinking it was one of those countryside myths meant to frighten travellers. But as the bus cut through the lonely stretches of road, the laughter began to fade. The radio crackled into silence. The trees grew thicker, their twisted arms brushing against the windows like searching fingers. Then came the smell. It was faint at first, something like burnt palm oil and iron. And when the first drumbeat echoed from the dark forest, slow and deliberate, the students looked at one another with unease. The sound was not from any village nearby. It was too deep, too far below the earth. The driver whispered a prayer under his breath. One of the students scoffed. Another tried to record the sound. And the third, she began to cry, saying she saw faces in the glass beside her reflection. By the time the bus reached the crossroads where the drums fell silent, something had changed in the air, and none of them could explain why the road behind them had vanished. The village they sought was called Aremu, a quiet community surrounded by cocoa trees and red clay roads. It was a place where people still believed that every shadow held a story, and every whisper in the wind carried a warning. For generations, elders in Aremu told tales about the road spirits, ancient beings who watched travellers and judged their hearts before letting them pass safely through December's night roads. Among the three students, Kunle, Ngozi, and Chuka, none truly believed in such things. They were city-bred, raised on phones, lights, and logic. Kunle, the loud one, was studying engineering. Ngozi, soft-spoken but sharp-minded, was in her final year of medicine. Chuka, the quiet observer, often filmed their adventures for his YouTube vlog. They thought their world was modern, untouched by myths. But that night would remind them, modernity has no power against the old things that never died. As the bus rolled through Aremu's outskirts, something about the air felt strange. Too still, too silent. No insects hummed, and no wind rustled the leaves. They should have reached the main junction hours ago, yet the forest seemed endless. The old driver's hands trembled as he gripped the wheel. "The road has stretched," he muttered. "It only does that when someone has offended the watchers." Kunle laughed. "Offended who?" "Baba, maybe your bus needs fixing." But the man didn't answer. His eyes were fixed on the side mirror, watching something only he could see. Ngozi's phone battery died without warning. Chuka's camera glitched. Every time he tried to film outside, the lens fogged over with dark mist. And when Kunle opened a packet of ground nuts, he froze. The nuts inside were black as coal. The air grew colder. The smell of burnt oil returned. Then, from the side of the road, a flickering lantern appeared. Someone, or something, stood holding it. The figure was tall, draped in white cloth, with its face hidden behind a wooden mask, carved with wide eyes and a smile that didn't belong to the living. The driver slammed the brakes, shouting a prayer in Yoruba. The bus skidded to a halt. The figure vanished. But when they looked out again, the road ahead had split into two, one path glowing faintly gold, the other dark and endless. The old man turned to them. "One road leads home, the other leads to where travellers never return. Choose with your heart, not your eyes." Kunle, impatient, urged him forward. "Let's go. There's no such thing as cursed roads." The bus lurched down the dark path. Minutes later, the sound of drums began again, closer this time. The trees leaned inward. The lantern light outside flickered as though the forest itself were breathing. Ngozi clutched her necklace and whispered a prayer her grandmother had taught her. Chuka began to record, his camera shaking in his hands. "If something happens," he murmured, "let people know we didn't imagine this." That was when they saw it, a figure running beside the bus, barefoot, eyes glowing red. Another followed, then another. Dozens of them, pale and silent, sprinting through the trees with impossible speed, keeping pace with the moving bus. Kunle shouted. The driver began reciting psalms. Ngozi screamed as one of the figures placed its face against her window, its features shifting, melting, until it looked like her own reflection smiling back. The bus swerved violently, the tires screeched, and then silence. When they opened their eyes, the bus was parked in front of an abandoned petrol station. The forest was gone, the night was still, but the driver was missing. In his seat lay his cap, and beneath it a small carved charm shaped like a drum. Chuka picked it up, trembling. "Should we leave it?" he asked. "No," Kunle said, trying to sound brave. "It's just a souvenir." He pocketed it. That was their first mistake. The night grew colder as the students stepped out of the bus. The abandoned petrol station stood like a forgotten relic from another time, its roof half collapsed, its signs swinging gently in the wind. No lights, no movement. Only the faint hum of cicadas and the distant echo of a drum beat that seemed to come from nowhere and everywhere at once. Kunle led the way, pretending not to be afraid, but his voice cracked when he said, "We just need directions. Someone must live nearby." Ngozi shook her head. "This place feels wrong. The air, its heavy Chuka, still holding his camera, panned around nervously. Through the viewfinder, strange things appeared. Shadows that didn't move with the wind, figures that vanished when he looked with his eyes. He lowered the camera. "We shouldn't be here." A chill passed through them as the drumbeat stopped abruptly. Then came a whisper, low and drawn out, like wind crawling through an empty shell. "Return what is not yours." Kunle froze. Who said that? No answer. Only the rustling of dry leaves. He tightened his grip on his backpack where he'd stashed the carved drum charm. Ngozi's gaze fell on the pocket. "Kunle, maybe that thing—" "Don't start," he interrupted sharply. "It's just wood." But the ground beneath them began to tremble. The lights of the bus flickered once, twice, and then died completely. From the darkness, shapes began to emerge. Not people, not quite spirits either. They were translucent, their faces carved with ancient tribal marks, their bodies wrapped in white cloth that fluttered though there was no wind. Their eyes glowed faintly gold, and their mouths moved, but the sound that came out wasn't words, it was music, drums, chants, footsteps, all in perfect rhythm. Ngozi fell to her knees, crying, "Kunle, please, return it." Kunle hesitated, but pride held him back. "You're scared of stories." "Spirits aren't real." Then one of the spirits stepped forward. Its hand reached through Kunle's chest as though he was smoke. He screamed, clutching his heart. The charm in his pocket grew hot, burning through the fabric until it fell to the ground, glowing like embers. The spirit's voice was suddenly clear. "You took what binds the road. Now the road will take you." The ground cracked open. Red light spilled out from beneath the petrol station. The students stumbled backward as the spirits surrounded them in a slow, rhythmic circle. Chuka tried to record again, but the screen turned black. On it, a single line of text appeared. "You are not supposed to see this." The drums grew louder, each beat like thunder in their chests. Ngozi screamed for mercy, reciting every prayer she knew. The spirits paused, heads tilting toward her as though listening. Then, as if acknowledging her faith, the circle broke, and a path of light opened behind her. Kunle tried to follow, but invisible hands dragged him down. He shouted her name, but the road swallowed his voice. Chuka lunged to grab him, and for a second it seemed Kunle might break free. But then the light went out, and Kunle was gone. Only the sound of a single heartbeat echoed, then stopped. Ngozi and Chuka ran, stumbling through the night until they burst into a clearing where dawn was breaking. The sun rose behind the hills, washing the forest in gold. They fell to the ground, gasping, their bodies trembling. When they looked back, the road was gone. The petrol station was gone. Only a wide stretch of red earth remained, as if nothing had ever been there. By midday, they found a passing truck that took them home. Neither spoke a word during the ride. Days later, when Chuka uploaded his final footage, he found something strange. Every time he pressed play, the screen flickered and showed Kunle sitting quietly at the back of the bus, staring into the camera. His eyes were blank. His mouth was moving silently, forming a single word over and over. Ngozi leaned close, whispering, "What is he saying?" Chuka turned up the volume. The whisper became clear. "Pray before you travel. Pray before you travel. Pray before you travel." They never spoke of that night again. Ngozi dropped out of school a month later and joined her grandmother in a small prayer ministry. Chuka stopped making videos, but every December he lights 3 candles by the roadside, one for Kunle, one for the driver, and one for all travellers who never returned. And in Aremu village, the elders still speak of the cursed road that only appears to those who mock the old ways. They say the forest spirits walk its length during December, watching who prays before they journey and who laughs at the idea of prayer. Some nights, when the wind blows across the cocoa trees, you can still hear the drums faintly beating beneath the earth. Slow, patient, waiting. So when you pack your bags this December and step onto the road, remember the lesson of Kunle, Ngozi and Chuka. The world may have changed, but the old laws of the road have not. Before the tires roll, before the engine starts, before the first step out of your door, bow your head and whisper a prayer. Because not all who travel truly return.